in assessment of learning 1. Okay, are you seeing the presentation now? Hello? Do you see
Yes,
the
sir.
presentation now? Okay, good. So
Yes, sir.
we now proceed to lesson 2 of our course in assessment of learning 1. And our lesson 2 is about determining progress towards the attainment of learning outcomes. Okay? So this lesson would mean that we will be looking into the learning progress. We will be looking into the learning or academic progress of learners, okay, towards the attainment or achievement of learning outcomes. So itong aralin na ito ay tuturuan tayo kung paano malaman ang progreso ng mga mag-aaral sa kanilang pagkatuto, okay, gamit ang pagkakamit ng bunga ng pagkatuto o tinatawag nating learning outcomes. Okay, now we review, okay, the intended learning outcomes of this lesson. There are two learning outcomes: distinguish among measurement, assessment, and evaluation. So we will try to explain later, and we'll try to distinguish or differentiate all these big concepts of the lesson. The next one is to explain the various approaches to assessment. Okay, ano yung mga iba't ibang metodolohiya, pamamaraan para gamitin ang pagtatasa sa ating mga klase. Ano yung mga iba't ibang estratehiya nang sa ganun na magkaroon ng kalidad na pagtatasa, nang sa ganun na masigurado ng isang guro na ang bunga ng pagkatuto ay nakakamit ng mga mag-aaral. Then the performance-based assessment for this lesson is for you to create an assessment timeline for a select unit in one field. Okay, you would be asked later to draft a plan, okay, a list of assessments, okay, assessment strategies, okay, select using a select unit in your own field of specialization. And the following activities are the things that we would be doing. We are doing now the video conferencing, but not via Zoom Cloud, but we are making use of the Google Meet. So for us not to be limited of the time in discussing the lesson. The second one is brainstorming. This is an asynchronous chat-based online learning to distinguish among big concepts in the lesson. After we discuss this lesson, this first part of the topic of lesson 2, I'll be opening or I'll be giving you the discussion task or brainstorming task that you have to complete up to Saturday. That is just the task that you would be doing for this week. And the third is learning from a video clip. You will be later looking into the LMS, into our LMS, and look into the video clip I have shared there for you to watch and for you to learn something new about learning outcomes and about assessment and evaluation. And number 4, next week, this would be next week, you would be asked to complete a worksheet. Okay, you would be asked to complete a worksheet to check whether you know how to create an assessment timeline. And of course, after doing this lesson, you would be doing a quiz, a timed summative assessment, similarly with what you did in the first lesson to complete your understanding of this chapter or of this unit of the learning content. Okay, just allow me to admit those who would like to join our class. Benjamin. Okay, now we continue our discussion. Sorry for this. Okay. Okay, we now proceed to the first learning outcome, that learning outcome for this lesson 2, and that is to distinguish the following big concepts of the lesson. I have added 2. I have added 1 that we need to identify, that we need to be aware of as educators. The first one is test and non-test. It's about gathering information about learners. That's just an overview of the definition of what a test and non-test is. These are tools by teachers to gather information about learners. We will be dwelling into that as we progress in our discussion. And the second one is measurement. We will define what measurement is. And when we say measurement, an overview of the definition of measurement is it is used by teachers to quantify test results. Okay? To quantify test results. And the third concept is assessment. It is about making decisions about student learning. And the last big concept is evaluation, that is to determine the changes in the learner, to determine the learning progress or changes in the learner. So these are the four big concepts, okay, that we are to distinguish as we go through with our discussion. We start first with this passage. It says, the evolving views in the use of educational assessment are the result of the rising demand for an outcomes-based evaluation. As we have said, there has been so many shifts in education because of the advancement of technology and because of the establishment of a knowledge society. And because there's knowledge society, that learning is equated with creation, then that would mean that students have to be taught by teachers on how to produce new knowledge based on available information provided by the internet or provided by technology. And it's because of this that the different elements of the teaching learning process have to adjust to. And part of that teaching and learning process, or part of that element of teaching and learning process, are what we call as assessment methodologies or evaluation approaches. Hence, if there's a need, if there's a shift to outcomes-based education, our assessment practices, our evaluation practices have to shift also towards outcomes-based teaching and learning. Okay? So, with this shift in education, teachers must objectively see that their students concretely manifest the expected outcomes of instruction. Because there's outcomes-based education, there's a shift to outcomes-based education. So as teachers, we have to ensure that our students are exemplifying, that our students are demonstrating, that our students are developing in them the expected outcomes of why we teach them, of why we have to further their understanding of a certain learning content of our lesson. Aside from this, teachers must discover that the noble qualities, the noble qualities of the students. Usually, as teachers, I think I am quite guilty of this. That usually we see the negative things about the kind of learners that we have now in the 21st century, but oftentimes we fail to see the qualities that these 21st century learners do possess, okay, that teachers could bank in, so that the outcomes of education, the outcomes of instruction could easily be achieved by them. Okay, minsan nakakalimutan namin tignan yung positibong kakayahan ng mga mag-aaral sa pangkasalukuyan, at ang nakikita lang namin ay negatibong meron sila na hindi akma doon sa pamamaraan kung paano kami na-train o kung paano kami nalinang ng aming mga guro nung nakaraan. Pero kung titignan natin, mas maraming magagandang kakayahan at magagandang kakayanan ng mga mag-aaral sa pangkasalukuyan kumpara doon sa mga mag-aaral nung nakaraan. Okay, for example, you have that skill to immediately appreciate diversity. Tama? Meron kayong kakayahan na bigyan ng kahalagahan ang pagkakaiba-iba ng mga tao, pagkakaiba ng mga kamag-aral ninyo sa loob ng klase. Yun ang di namin nakikita. Ako kasi last batch yung traditional education, na pag meron kami nakikitang kakaiba sa klase, pinagtatawanan namin at discriminate namin. Pero ngayon, sa panahon ngayon, kapag nakita nyo na magkakaiba kayo, mas lalo pa rin napapahalagahan ang pagkakaiba ng bawat isa at nagagamit ang pagkakaibang ito para lalo pang mapalawak o mapalalim ang pangunawa ninyo sa nilalaman ng pagkatuto o sa learning content. And the third one is teachers must consider the context of outcomes-based education. Ano nga ba ang konteksto ng outcomes-based education? Bakit kailangan nating unawain na dapat ito ang hangganan, na dapat ito ang pinakahuling makamit ng mga mag-aaral sa ating klase? Gaano kahalaga ang outcome nang sa ganun ay maging matagumpay ang mag-aaral tungo sa kanyang pagkatuto, tungo sa kanyang pag-unawa sa mga nilalaman ng pagkatuto, nilalaman ng kurso sa ating klase. So these are things that teachers must do, okay, when education has shifted to outcomes-based education. Now, these are the recent concepts of assessment and evaluation. About learning domains, what's the concept about learning domains? The teacher is expected to be fully conversant with the measurement and assessment procedures that underpin testing in 3 domains: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Okay, what does this mean? That as teachers using outcomes-based education, we have to look into it that our outcomes would target the 3 learning domains. That these 3 learning domains have to work together. That these 3 learning domains have to be developed, have to be enkindled among our learners. Hindi lang puro kognitibo, hindi lamang puro apektibo, hindi lamang puro psikomotor, kundi tignan natin na itong tatlong ito ay balanseng nalilinang sa ating mga mag-aaral. Ito ang ating gabay kung paano gumawa ng mga pangungusap na nagpapakita ng mga bunga ng pagkatuto. Okay? Ito yung tinatawag nating KSV. Okay? Cognitive for knowledge, psychomotor for skills, and affective for values. The development of the KSV of our students. And this is equivalent to 3 Ks in Filipino. What is cognitive? Kaalaman. What is affective? Kahalagahan. What is psychomotor? Kakayahan. Okay, the 3 Ks of learning domains in Filipino. Then another concept of assessment and evaluation pertains to assessment tools. The concept of assessment is more appropriate than measurement because it requires the use of all means, of all methods, of all approaches to understand a student's scholastic performance. In a traditional classroom, we merely make use of measurement. That pertains to quantifying learners' understanding of the lesson. We quantify, we put grades, we assign ratings to everything that our students do inside our class. That is traditional learning. But in the 21st century, in outcomes-based education, we do more value of assessment than measurement. Pero hindi ibig sabihin hindi tayo gumagamit ng measurement. Ibig lang sabihin nito ay mas nagagamit natin, mas tinitignan natin ang paggamit ng assessment, ng pagtatasa upang makita natin ang academic performance, ang pagkatuto ng ating mga mag-aaral sa loob ng klase. Okay? Check lang natin kung merong tuloy natin mamaya, i-check lang natin kung merong kailangang i-admit sa klase. Wala naman. Okay. So these are the 2 recent concepts on assessment and evaluation. The first one pertains on the whole person development of our learners because we have to develop in them the 3 learning domains. The second one is about the importance of assessment, okay, to check whether our students have understood something in our class or not. Okay? So we proceed to the first big concept, and that is test and non-test. As I have said in the previous slide, Tests and non-tests are tools used by teachers to gather information about learners. So we will be dwelling into this. We will look into the specific definition of test and non-test as we go through with the succeeding slides. The first one is, what is a test? Ano ba ang pagsusulit? Anong ibig sabihin ng pagsusulit? It is a device used to indirectly measure the intangible aspects of a student's life and to gather information about the student's learning progress. Ibig sabihin nito ay binibigyan natin ng pagsusulit ang ating mga mag-aaral upang makita natin kung gaano karami o makita natin ang estado ng kanilang pagkatuto o antas ng kanilang nalalaman tungkol sa mga nilalaman na ating naituro sa kanila. Okay? Another definition is the scores. Okay, the scores that we gather, the quantity that we gather from the test, okay, must be analyzed and evaluated. Pag nakita natin, halimbawa, ang nakuha niyang score sa isang pagsusulit ay 5. Okay? At ang 5 ito, at ang 5 lamang ang tama niyang sagot sa 10 tanong. So, anong ibig sabihin nito? Scores have to be analyzed and evaluated by teachers. Tests can be influenced by some factors that contribute to errors in gathering valid and reliable information. This phenomenon is called as measurement error. What do you mean by this? Minsan, okay, magugulat na lang ang mga guro dahil magugulat na lamang sila dahil nagturo naman sila ng mabuti sa kanilang sariling pagsisiyasan. Pero noong nagkaroon ng pagsusulit ang kanyang mga mag-aaral, ay maraming bumagsak sa klase, maraming bumagsak sa pagsusulit. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Malamang ang pagsusulit ay hindi nagawa ng mabuti. Malamang ang tanong ay hindi na itanong ng mabuti. Malamang ang mga choices sa isang objective test type ay hindi ganoon kauna-unawa para sa mga mag-aaral. Ito yung tinatawag nating measurement error. Okay? Meron ba kayong karanasan sa klase na nag-test kayo tapos yung nilalaman ng pagsusulit ay parang walang natalakay sa klase, pero alam naman ninyo na tinalakay ng mabuti ng guro ang inyong mga leksyon sa klase, pero nung pagdating sa pagsusulit parang wala kayong maisagot dahil parang may mali doon sa test.
Exam part.
Pero na ba pagkakataon ganoon?
Maraming beses.
Maraming beses. Okay. Maraming beses. So, ibig sabihin, kailangan talagang muling turuan ng mga guro kung paano gumawa ng tamang pagsusulit. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Ito ang gagawin natin dito sa subject na ito. Its preparation, administration, and interpretation should critically be analyzed. Ang test, hindi basta-basta ginagawa. Kailangan pag-isipan ng mabuti, kailangan gawin ng epektibo, at kailangan tignan ng mabuti para nang sa ganun makapagbigay ng mensahe kung kailangan bang magturo muli ang guro, at kailangan bang lalong paglalimin o paglawasin ng guro yung kanyang pagkakatalakay ng nasabing nilalamang pagkatuto. Now, please consider that teachers are concerned that test users often uncritically accept test scores. Minsan yung mga estudyante hindi makapaniwala, no? Hindi sila makapaniwala dahil bakit ganito ang score na nakuha ko? Bakit ganito ang score? Bakit bagsak ako? Samantalang parang feeling ko tama yung mga sagot ko. And there are 3 reasons provided by Kubizin and Borwich as regards this uncritically accepted test scores by students or learners themselves. What are these reasons? The first one, tests are only tools, and tools can be appropriately used, unintentionally misused, and intentionally abused. Tama ba? Minsan, ang test, hindi talaga siya, ang pagsusulit ay hindi talaga siya yung pinakamagandang pamamaraan para makita o para masukat ang natutunan ng mga mag-aaral sa klase. Okay, minsan hindi rin epektibo ang test. Hindi rin epektibo ang pagsusulit para makita natin, para malaman natin, magaling itong estudyante na ito, meron natutunan itong estudyante na ito. Lalo na kung ang pagsusulit ay naabuso, ang pagkakagamit, lalo na kung mali ang pagkakagamit ng pagsusulit. For example, ng abusong pagkakagamit ng pagsusulit. Okay? Yung marami kayong marami kayong binasang mga modules halimbawa. Tapos lagi nagbibigay ng pagsusulit ang teacher. Pero kulang sa input. Ito yung tawag nating abusive use of test o maling pagkakagamit ng pagsusulit. Second one, test, like other tools, can be well-designed or poorly designed. Tama ito. If tests are well-designed, then students, other than the scores of the students, would be a good measurement whether to do reteaching or to do furtherance of the lesson. If tests are poorly designed, certainly it will not measure quality learning by students. And third, both poorly designed and well-designed tools in the hands of ill-trained users can be dangerous. Kapag mali ang pagkakagawa ng pagsusulit, o di kaya kapag tama ang pagkakagawa ng pagsusulit, it may be both okay and dangerous. It's dangerous if it's poorly designed because it might not clearly tell or clearly measure how students have learned something in our class. It may be okay or dangerous at the same time, even if it's well designed, because it would clearly show the kind of teaching that teachers are doing in their class. Mas halimbawa, you design it well, tapos tinest yung estudyante yung test, tapos maraming bumagsak. Ang mensahe nun ay, hindi ka nagturo ng mabuti. Okay, this is what a test means. Okay, yun ibig sabihin ng test. Okay? Yung quizzes ninyo, yung major exam ninyo, yung placement exam ninyo, sync entrance exam, these are all examples of tests. Okay? Next, what do we mean by a non-test? Ano naman ibig sabihin ng non-test? It is a device that does not force students to give their responses. Okay, non-test siya because you are not forced to give your response. It is usually based, should I say, on the teacher's direct observation as students perform the assigned task. So while you are doing a certain task, and teachers would observe you doing the task, and teachers would record the things that they observe about you while doing the task, this is an example of a non-test. Non-test is used to supplement the information gathered through the use of test. So maliban doon sa scores na nakuha ng estudyante sa isang pagsusulit, ginagamit din ng guro ang mga non-test na ito para makita din ang ugali o ang mga gawi ng mga mag-aaral habang ginagawa nila ang mga non-test activities na ito. And using both test and non-test will allow teachers to have a comprehensive view of the quality of students' learning progress. Dahil hindi lang siya umaasa doon sa numerical, doon sa rating, doon sa grado, kundi tinitignan din niya yung kalidad ng pagkatuto ng mag-aaral base sa kanyang mga nakikita habang ginagawa ng mga mag-aaral ang nasabing gawaing pagkatuto. Okay, that is non-test. Ano mga examples of non-test? Ito, wag kayong magulat. Ang non-test, okay, ito yung mga activities na ginagawa ninyo prior the summative test or prior the test itself. Ideally, Non-tests are not supposed to be rated, not supposed to be graded. But in the Philippines, and considering Filipino culture, we assign scores, we assign percentages, we assign ratings for non-test activities. Kaya huwag kayong magugulat. Bakit ang work merong percentage, sir? Bakit ganito merong percentage, sir? Bakit ginagawa yan sa Pilipinas? Because of the nature of Filipino learners. That Filipino learners would not usually respond if they are not getting something out from it. Okay? Kaya, kung nakikita ninyo sa Amerika, for example, walang grade ang binibigay sa city work, walang grade ang binibigay sa assignment. Walang score sa binibigay sa assignment, sa mga activities, sa mga city work. Ang the ultimate measure of learning of students, ang binibigyan lamang ng grade ay yung test na tinatawag natin, yung pagsusulit na tinatawag natin. But in the Philippines, we put value into non-test by providing or assigning scores into it. Okay, maliwanag po ba? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Ito yung mga halimbawa ng non-test. The first one is anecdotal record. Ano ibig sabihin ng anecdotal record? This focuses only on the unique experience, showing an attitude that needs some modification or intervention. Halimbawa, si teacher, meron siyang maliit na kwaderno. At dito sa kwaderno na ito, dito nilalagay yung observation niya sa kanyang mag-aaral habang habang gumagawa ng talakayan, habang ginagawa ng mag-aaral ang gawain pagkatuto, okay? Naglilista naman ang teacher ng kanyang mga observe. For example, sa klase natin ngayon, halimbawa meron ako anecdotal record. Lalagay ko dito na Michael Ordinario has always responded in all the questions I provided. Pag sabi ko, intindihan ba? Yes, sir. Ganyan si Michael. Lalagay kong observation yon. Kasi patunayan later, itong record ko later dito, yung anecdotal record ko later, ay magpapatunay na, participative or well-engaged pala itong si Michael sa klase ko. Halimbawa, later, ang grade ni Michael pala ay 73. Okay, pero i-review ko yung mga attitude si Michael sa klase. Makikita ko doon na responsive siya sa mga tinatanong ko. Makikita ko doon na lagi siya nag-a-attend ng synchronous online video conference kahit hindi naman required. These are all anecdotal records. Tapos 73 ang computation ko ng grade niya. Pero dahil puro positibo ang nakita ko dun sa record ko, ipapasa ko si Michael. That is anecdotal record. Kaya tinawag na anecdote, ito yung totoong nangyari sa klase na nakita mo mismo. That is anecdotal record. Okay? The next one is checklist. This is a list of objectives that the students need to master. For example, gagawa ako ng checklist ko. Ano mga checks na nalagay ko? Ito yung mga objectives ko. Nalagay ko doon na nakapagbigay ng halimbawa para may paliwanag ang konsepto. Another part of the checklist ay nakapagpasa ng takdang aralin sa tamang oras. Another objective ay nakapagtalakay ng isang konsepto gamit ang masimbulong bagay, blah, 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 and others. So, itong checklist nito ngayon na gagamitin ko, check ko siya kung nagawa pa ng mag-aaral ito or hindi. That's what we call as checklist. Halimbawa sa inyo, pwede nyo gamitin ang checklist. Halimbawa, meron kayong ikokolektahin nyo lahat ng assessments niyo within the week sa klase. Ilan ang subjects niyo? Halimbawa, 8 ang subject ninyo. Ililista nyo lahat ng mga assessment na kailangan nyo kumpletuhin sa isang papel. Tapos lalagyan nyo ng target date ninyo. Doon lagyan nyo ng target date ang bawat assessment. I-check na lang ninyo kapag natapos na ninyo. Yun ang magiging guide ninyo nang sa ganun ay makompleto ninyo ng mabuti yung mga assessment na kailangan gawin ninyo within the week. That is an example of a checklist. Daily assignment. So what do we mean by this? Reinforce learning at home or even in school during vacant periods. Okay? Ito yung tatawag natin in the new term, ito yung tatawag natin learning contract. Okay? So wag kayong malito, ito yung bagong tawag sa assignment. Learning contract or agreement. Agreement, learning contract, daily assignment, these are all synonymous terms. Okay? In the 21st century. Right? Say you reinforce. For example, kaya sabi natin, another name of daily assignment is enrichment activity. So, maliban doon sa talakayan na ginawa ni guro sa loob ng klase, ay magbibigay pa si teacher ng isang activity na pwedeng gawin during your vacant time, pwedeng gawin sa inyong bahay, nang sa nun ay lalo pa ninyo mapaglalim ang inyong pag-unawa, ang inyong kaalaman doon sa nasabing nilalamang pagkatito. Okay? That is what we call as daily assignment, enrichment activities, ano pa tawag diyan, learning agreement, learning contract. Next is debate. O, pwede rin magpagawa ng debate. These are non-tests. Halimbawa sa klase, nagpapadebate ka, students take opposing positions on a topic and defend their side. Okay? So you just ask them to discuss as a team, to support their stand as regards a certain issue and others. That is an example of a debate. Demonstration. Okay, students present a visual enactment of a particular activity. That's what we call a demonstration. For example, after teaching them on how to shoot a ball into the ring, okay, you ask the students to do that. That is demonstration. Okay, after teaching them on how to prepare cookies, then you ask them do it. That is demonstration. And demonstration ay visual enactment of something, of a certain skill, of a certain activity. Pwedeng gawin ang demonstration through videos. Pwedeng gawin ang demonstration through actual movement. Pwedeng gawin ang demonstration through photos or through imagery. These are all examples of demonstration. Next, games. Students engage themselves in enjoyable activities without fear of being tested. Yung para maging masaya lang ang klase. You do games. Okay, for example, i-adapt mo yung celebrity bluff sa klase mo. Gamitin mo celebrity bluff as a game sa klase mo for students to enjoy while they are learning something in class. Okay, or game ka na ba? And others, or Pinoy Henyo and others. These are examples of all games in class. Or passing a message relay and others. These are all games. You are promoting fun while students are learning something in class. But please take note that games should not just be fun, but games should be coupled with learning too. Okay, clear? Okay, these are examples of non-test. Another example, journal. Okay, the students are asked to write and reflect about their learning experiences. Okay, I remember one time, I made use of journal in my EdTech class. Okay, ito yung batch nila, batch yung mga teachers na ngayon dyan sa senior high school. For example, batch nila Marvin Bakay, Mr. Marvin Bakay. Marvin Bakay was one of my students before in professional education subject. I asked them to keep a learning log with them. The learning log is another name for journal. Okay, a learning log is I asked them that every meeting, every after our session, I asked them to write a simple statement, a very simple sentence about a certain thing which they have learned in my class. Okay, for example, today, they just have to complete a prompt. Okay, today, I learned that, then they have to complete that prompt or that unfinished sentence as their entry in their learning log or in their learning journal. That is an example of journal. Okay? Ang journal na ito, makikita natin later, pag babasahin ng teacher, makikita how students progress as they learn inside their class. Next is oral and written report. Students conduct research and report the outcome in an oral or written format. For example, you assign them to work on this topic, but you ask them later to write a paper about the topic they have researched on, or to present or to do an oral presentation through PowerPoint or through video about what they have learned, about what they have researched to. Okay, this is an example of oral and written report. Another example is panel discussion. A group verbally presents information obtained through research or library work. Okay, for example, it's just a team with 5 members will be asked to discuss, will be asked to do an oral discussion or oral conversation as regards a certain topic. That is panel discussion. We will later be doing this. Okay? I will be asking you later to do a panel discussion of a certain subject, but you do the panel discussion online through Zoom or through Google Meet or through any means of doing video conferencing. Okay, for me to see or for me to check whether you have learned something or you are learning something from one another. Okay? Pero hindi mo na ngayon. Later siguro. Okay? Next is portfolio of students' work. Okay. Students collect pieces of evidence and reflect upon their own learning. I think I did this one time, a learning portfolio. I did this one time in my class with iba mga naging estudyante ko dyan sa high school, sa junior high school. Sa klase ko kina um, Rachel Palatao. I remember, I required them of a clear book. Okay, this is at step one, I think. A clear book where all the things that I would be returning them, lahat ng worksheets na check ko na ibabalik ko sa kanila, quiz templates, ibabalik ko sa kanila and others, ilalagay nila iyon, iipunin nila iyon sa isang clear book. Then, during the final term, they have to submit that prior the final exam. Tapos later, gagamitin ko siya to check. Okay, kung ipapasa ko si estudyante or hindi, o kung deserve ni estudyante yung grade or hindi. Halimbawa, okay, na-compute ko ang grade niya halimbawa ay 72 sa final grade niya. Ni-review ko yung kanyang learning portfolio, yung collection niya ng mga work niya. At nakita ko doon na, for example, yung first task niya ng prelims ay nakakuha siya ng 6/20. Second task niya, nakakuha siya ng 7/20. Third task niya, nakakuha siya ng 17/30. Next task niya, nakakuha siya ng 18/30. Ngayon, that would help decide whether to pass the student or not. So sabihin ko, oo nga, si estudyante, present siya sa lahat ng mga tasks nito, kompleto niya lahat ng assessment, mababa nga yung score niya, hindi nga pasado yung score niya, o pasang-awa lang yung score niya, pero makikita mo yung progress, tumataas yung kanyang score. So the student deserves to be given a passing grade in my class. That is an example of a learning portfolio. Next, project. Students work on a project in their own creative way. Okay, we ask the students to complete a certain project, to submit a certain major requirement. That is an example of an answer. And last example, teacher observation. Teachers observe while students work on the assigned task. Anong pinagkaiba niya dito? Teacher observation is usually non-written. But anecdotal records are written observation. Sino pinagkaiba nung dalawa? Okay. So we stop for a while. We stop for a while and we do question and answer on the first part of our discussion as regards test and non-test. Please make use of the chat button to ask questions. Sabi ni Lavernil, sir, pa-add daw po si Mr. Pielago. Salamat po, sir. Please text him to click the link now so that I can add him. Okay, any questions? Please do not be too hesitant to type or encode your questions on the chat box. I'll be answering the questions. Please. Si Jovins wala na sa klase, no? Andyan pa.
Sir, meron pa.
Sorry. Jovina Alvarez ang ginamit niya kasi. Okay. Sino si Jovina Alvarez?
Sir, ako lapas, sir.
Wala pa yan.
Pag umaga, hindi ko na.
Okay. Umaga ngayon, ha? Okay. Okay. Jovins, may question ka atin ko?
Sir, meron po.
Ano yun atin?
Ano po, sir, yung sa assessment, sir, how about po yung role plays, like storytelling, like that, sir?
Assessment
sir, assessment pa rin, sir.
Non-test siya.
Sir, pero ano po yung mini-measure nun, sir?
Ang mini-measure niya ay depende doon sa learning outcome na nakaakma doon sa paggawa ng role play, doon sa pagdula-dulaan. Kasi sir, lahat ng pinapagawa ng guro dapat sa klase ay nakaakma doon sa bunga ng pagkatuto doon sa learning outcome. So depende yan sa learning outcome. Kumbaga, titignan mo din kapag magpapagawa ka ng non-test activities, titignan mo din kung akma ba yung pinapagawa mo. Halimbawa, ang tinalakay mo sa klase ay ay tungkol sa Renaissance, yung Philippine history halimbawa, Renaissance, ang tinalakay mo, tapos nagpa-roleplay ka, akma ba si roleplay para talakayin ng Renaissance? Hindi. Hindi siya akma. So mag-isip ka ng iba pang mga activities.
Sir, ano kasi sir, I just observed na yung mga teachers, sir,
Oo.
binibigay like story po, sir, story siya, tapos ginagawang roleplay.
Pero anong subject yan? Sa anong subject halimbawa?
Like, ano po, sir,
Ha?
sa English, sir, yung yung parang yung expedition ni Magellan, ganun, sir. Meron
Ay,
na kasi naset na kasi yung story, sir. Ang gagawin lang ng student is to parang i-roleplay lang yung mga nangyari dun sa story, sir. So,
oo.
hindi
Oh,
ba parang hindi siya.
Pwede naman siya kung ang learning outcome doon ay para malinang ang kakayahan ninyo malinang inyong kakayahan sa pagkikipag talastasan or communication skills, then that can be. Role play is a good activity. Please remember that in English, in teaching English and literature or languages and literature, in teaching language and literature, there are four macro skills. Actually, five na eh. Five macro skills that need to be developed. Communication, writing, speaking, ano pa? I forgot the other three. So merong macro skills na dire-develop. And role play is a good activity, it's a good non-test activity to develop these macro skills. Kasi you would be asked to write a script. You would be asked to do the role play in front of the class. And that is developing your conversational skills and others. So, depende yan sa learning outcome. Sa English,
Ay, okay.
appropriate si dula-dulaan eh. Sa English, appropriate si dula-dulaan.
Okay po, sir.
Pero, hindi ko siya nakikita na appropriate sa PE.
Okay, sir. Tinanong ko lang for clarification.
Oo, tama yun din. Maganda yung tanong mo. Tama yan. Kasi maraming mga guro na nagpapa-roleplay lang na walang kadahi-dahilanan, no?
Sir, then bakit din nilalagay sa rubrics yung mga yung ganyan?
Alin yung?
Yung kunyari yung mga mga sets po ng play, then yung yung parang.
Tama ka. Bakit kailangan ilagay sa rubric ang mga ganito? Depende nga doon sa learning outcome mo. Kung sa learning outcome mo, hindi naman tinitignan ng mga ganito, hindi mo kailangan ilagay sa rubric. Kaya nga dapat sa paggawa ng rubric, nakadepende rin siya, nakaangkla din siya doon sa bunga ng pagkatuto.
Okay maraming po, sir.
Maraming mga mali na ginagawa ng mga guro din minsan. Na
okay
dapat tinitignan natin. Kaya nga napakahalaga ng talakayan na meron tayo, yung kursong meron tayo ngayon, dahil makikita ninyo kung paano ba dapat ang pag-iisip ng magandang non-test activities para sa mga mag-aaral na nakaangkla, na nakaakma dun sa bunga ng pagkatuto. Kaya napakahalaga ng bunga ng pagkatuto. That's lesson 3 na titignan natin later. Paano gumawa ng tamang bunga ng pagkatuto? Paano gumawa ng how to draft a good learning outcome? Kasi doon nakasalalay lahat eh na mga gawaing pagkatuto, ng mga learning experiences as you go through discussing your lesson.
Okay po, sir. Thank you po.
Okay. Very good, Jovina. That's a good point. I hope that the others are learning from our conversation. How about the others? Any question? Halimbawa nito, observation ko, no? Jovin have been asking good questions in our discussion. Makaka-apekto yan later when I complete your grade. Kasi
Yes, sir.
observation ko yun eh. That's an example of non-test.
Okay po, sir.
Siyempre, iba mamotivate na magtanong. O, sige nga, antayin natin. Mag-chat naman kayo nga. Richard, David De Ocampo, may tanong ka?
Sir?
May tanong ka ating ko?
Sir, wait lang, sir.
Isaiah, may tanong ka, Isaiah?
Wala, sir. Wala, sir.
Wala. Si Jovert. Jovert.
Sir, may tanong ata si Jamila, sir.
At Jamila. Yes,
Sa
Jamila.
chat. Nasa chat, sir.
Nasa chat natin. Wala pa ako nababasa. Ay, ito. Jamila, sabi ni Jamila, Sir, non-test po ba ang graded recitation? Recitation is an example of non-test. Okay. Pero explanation ko nga kanina, Bakit binibigyan natin ng score ang recitation? Kasi nga sa kulturang Pinoy, sa kultura ng mga mag-aaral sa kultura ng mga Pilipino, sa kultura natin, hindi gumagalaw kasi ng estudyante, hindi namo-motivate, hindi nagaganyak ang estudyante sa pagsunod sa mga nasabing gawain pagkatuto hanggat wala siyang nakukuhang rating, wala nakukuhang score doon. Pero ideally, recitation, anything that we do before a test are non-test. Okay? Okay, that's a good clarification, Janila. Everything that we do prior a certain test are examples of non-test. Now, ideally, these non-tests are not supposed to be graded, are not supposed to be given ratings, but because of our culture as learners, as Filipino learners, that we cannot just do tasks without us getting something out from it. Kaya nilalagyan ng grade, nilalagyan ng score, nilalagyan ng rating ang nasabing non-test.
Sir, may question
Yes.
po ako.
Okay.
Sir, di ba sabi mo po na prior to the yung mga non-test, paano yung pre-test po, sir? Saan
Yeah.
yun, sir?
Pre-test, okay, papasok yan later sa assessment. Okay. Ang pre-test ay halimbawa pa rin siya ng non-test. Tinatawag lang siya na pre-test because it would allow teachers to diagnose kung meron ng dating alam itong mag-aaral doon sa nilalaman na tatalakayin pa lamang ng guro. Non-test pa siya, hindi dapat siya i-record. Yung score dapat doon sa pre-test ay hindi dapat siya i-record. Parang basehan lamang siya ng guro para makita niya kung saan siya papasok at kung paano siya papasok para talakayin yung bagong nilalaman na kailangang talakayin. Okay. I really like the class now. There are good questions. Jamila, mag-reply ka naman dun sa chat kung okay yung sagot ko dun sa tanong mo.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Jobert.
Hello, sir.
Jobert, you have been earning good scores in our activities, no?
Sir, I will just ask lang sana kung ang test, measurement, assessment, and evaluation, does there follow a cycle po ba siya or hindi naman po, sir?
Okay. Hindi siya ang siklo. These things are not, hindi siya cycle, okay? Hindi siya cycle pero they have to blend with one another. Okay, anong sinabi ko? Later, discuss natin lahat kasi nasa test pa lang tayo. They have to blend with one another. Ibig sabihin, kailangan, you cannot do measurement without doing testing. Tama? You cannot also do assessment, okay, without considering test, non-test, testing, and even measurement. And you cannot even evaluate without using all these things to check whether there's learning progress among your learners. So, ibig sabihin, ang bawat isang ito ay kailangan, ang bawat konseptong ito ay kailangan niyang gamitin ng bawat isa, kailangan niyang gamitin ng iba pang mga konsepto, nang sa ganun ay magawa niya yung pinakamithiin niya na makita ang progreso ng mag-aaral sa kanyang pagkatuto. So they blend, Jobert. It's not a cycle actually. They just blend with one another. Okay? That's a good point also. Any other question? Thank you. Walang hiya ka, Javina. Ba't ikaw nag-chat? Inaantay ko si Jamila. Okay na si Jamila, meron na. Sabi ni Jamila, sir, okay na okay po. Okay? Well explained po, sir. Siguro ito yung reply ni Jovin doon sa pagpapaliwanag ko doon sa kanyang katanungan. Okay, any other question?
Hello, sir.
Jovert?
Sir, we are often confused about tests and assessment. So, does assessment always include tests and does tests include always assessment, sir?
Good. Okay, good. Test is not test, is always an assessment. But assessment is not just about test. Ulitin ko yon. Ang pagsusulit ay laging pagtatasa. Pero ang pagtatasa ay hindi lamang pagsusulit. What do I mean by that? Test, non-test, testing, measurement, these are all assessments. Okay? Lahat ng ito ay assessment. Later, we will discuss that kasi nandun pa lang tayo sa test, no? But it's okay that we are now advancing. Nandun pa lang tayo sa test. But please take note that test, non-test, or anything that we do inside our class, any learning activity, any learning experience, okay, inside our class, in a formal education, these are all examples of assessment. Okay? Because you need all these things. You need test, you need non-test, you need testing, you need measurement to check the student's progress. And checking student's progress and deciding whether to teach or reteach or to further the discussion is an example of assessment. Okay? So maliwanag iyon. Okay, yun po yung sagot doon sa tanong mo, Jobert. Jobert, magpakita ka naman ng mukha mo muna kasi parang na-miss ko na yung mukha mo. Okay na? Benjamin? Okay na ba? Isa si Jobert na nawala siya. Okay? Shall we continue our discussion? Shall we now continue our discussion?
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
No, you know, I love all your questions. This is what we call as a learning conversation because we are learning from one another as we go through with our discussion. Si Grade 5, may tanong ba?
Sir, late ako nakapasok kaya wala akong idea dun sa topic.
Pero meron ka naman nakukuha dun sa talakayan natin ngayon?
Meron naman, sir.
Okay, very good, Grade 5. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa'yo, Grade 5, ha, pabago-bago ka ng pangalan. Okay. May we now continue?
Opo, sir.
Okay. So, punta naman lang tayo ngayon sa, punta tayo dyan, non-test, test and non-test pa rin, pero what is testing? When we say testing, it is the process of administering a test to an individual or a group of students. That's how simple the definition is. This process involves steps such as test preparation, test administration, and collection of test papers. In the latter part of our course later, I will be teaching you on how to do table specification, on how to prepare test questions, on how to administer tests, on how to draft good alternative response tests, good multiple response test, multiple choice test, alternative response, structured response test, structured essay test, and others. This is what we call testing. Okay? Now we proceed to number 2 concept, and that is measurement. Okay. As we have said in the previous slide, measurement is about quantifying test results. When we quantify, we assign scores. When we quantify, we assign rating. When we quantify, we assign a percentage. When we quantify, we assign a number to check whether the students have learned something from our discussion. That is measurement. Other definition of measurement is this. It begins when the teacher compares students' responses with the presumably correct responses in the scoring sheet. For example, nagpa-test ka, meron kang answer key, chinek mo, kinompare mo yung sagot ng estudyante doon sa answer sheet, yun ang tinatawag nating measurement. Okay? A raw score in the test has no meaning. For example, nakakuha ako ng 9 na tamang sagot. Walang ibig sabihin yan. Kung 9 lang ang sinabi mo, walang ibig sabihin yan. But if the number of correct responses the learner got in the test is 9, and his score is 9, that's an example of a raw score. But that raw score has no meaning unless, okay, unless you will get the ratio of the score of the student vis-a-vis the total or the item of the test. Doon nagkakaroon ng ibig sabihin yung raw score. And that is what we call now as measurement. Ang bata, nakakuha ng 9 out of 20 sa test. Anong ibig sabihin nun? That is measurement. Handa. Okay, hindi man lang siya nakakuha ng kalahati doon sa mga tinalakay ko sa klase. Ibig sabihin, merong mali din sa pagkakaturo ko nung nasabing nilalamang pagkatuto. Okay. 9 over 10 na nakuha ng bata. Wow! The student or that student really have a good performance, really have understood the lesson because he got 9 over 10. So raw scores are merely meaningless unless a ratio, okay, is being identified by the teacher to check or to measure student learning from the class. The quantity obtained in measurement is further analyzed to determine whether an individual's performance meets the present criteria. And if you are to look into the score of the student vis-a-vis the criteria you have set that they have to meet, that is criterion reference measurement. Okay? Meron kong criteria. Halimbawa, yung sa ginagawa natin na content and grammar. That is the criteria. That is what we call as criterion reference measurement. So, ang measurement mo, ang basehan ng what's measurement in Filipino? I forgot. Ang basehan ng measurement mo ay yung indicators, yung success indicators na binigay mo sa mga estudyante on how they have to go about with the task. You are making use of criterion reference measurement. Ginagawa niyo ba niyo sa klase niyo? Criterion reference? Okay. Or, how the individual's performance compared with the performance of the other members, of the other students in the class, that is norm reference. So, for example, ito yung yung ranking ng mga estudyante, that is norm reference. For example, traditional teachers would do this. Usually, traditional teachers would make use of norm reference measurement. Halimbawa, chinek niya ang quiz ng mga estudyante. Nung binalik ng teacher, naka-arrange yung mga quizzes from highest to lowest. That is norm reference measurement. Tapos titignan niya, maraming bumagsak, konti ang pumasa. So kailangan ko ituro muli kasi maraming bumagsak. That is norm reference measurement. Okay? Now, we pause and we do question and answer as regards measurement. Okay, any question as regards measurement? Hi, Isaiah. I'm now seeing your face. How are you? Okay. We now proceed to question and answer. Sabi ni Benjamin Manuel, okay naman po, sir. Pero meron siyang naman, ibig sabihin meron siyang dapat na tanong. Benjamin? Questions? O, Grace pa, may tanong pa na ating ko.
Sir, what about naman po yung mga practical test, ganun po, sir, kanina? May
practical test, okay, practical test is measured are examples of measurement. Practical test, lalo sa highly practical based or highly demonstration based subjects like physical education, practical test is an example of a test. It's not non-test. But if it's done, if practical test is done at the end after teaching, okay, after teaching the skill, it is considered as a test. But if demonstrations are done prior to practical test, demonstrations are examples of non-test. Okay? Benjamin?
Yes, sir. Thank you po.
Okay, halimbawa ganito. Benjamin, ikaw ay PE teacher later, no? Halimbawa, tinuro mo sa mga estudyante mo kung paano maglaro ng volleyball. Okay. Binigyan mo sila ng pagkakataon na maglaro, okay, para mahasa yung kanilang kakayahan sa paglalaro ng volleyball. Yan ay halimbawa, yung pagkakataon na binigay mo sa kanila ay halimbawa ng non-test. Pero nung nagkaroon na ng practical test, na binigyan mo na ng score, yung pagkakalaro nila ng volleyball, yan ay tinatawag na test. Binigyan mo sila ng rubric. In-examine mo sila halimbawa, okay, kaya niyang, marunong siyang mag-serve, marunong siyang sumagot ng bola na tinatapon sa kanya and others. Ito ang criteria ko. Okay, check. That is criterion reference measurement or criterion-based measurement. Kasi nga, nakabase ka, yung ginawa ni estudyante, binase mo doon sa criteria mo, doon sa success indicators mo. Okay. Ngayon, tignan mo. Aba, marami sa klase ang pumasa doon sa practical test at konti yung bumagsak. That is norm reference or norm-based or standard-based, okay, measurement. Okay, maliwanag ba?
Yes, sir. Maliwanag po.
Okay. Sa klase ba natin, ito ba ay mix lamang ng Soc-Sci and PE?
Sir, pati ata math po, sir.
May math pa. Okay. Halimbawa sa math. Okay. Na measurement. Yung mga drills na binibigay mo, that is an example of non-test. Nung nagpa-quiz ka at kailangan i-solve nila ang problem, that is an example of a test. Saan papasok si criterion-based o criterion reference measurement? Kapag nasa criteria mo halimbawa, marunong yung bata na gumawa ng sarili niyang solusyon, kaya niyang sundan yung solusyon na ginawa ng teacher, nasagot niya ng tama yung tanong, yung problem, these are all your criteria. At kapag nagawa ng estudyante yon, you are making use, kinumpara mo yung score niya based from that, you put the score, you assign score of that test based from that criteria, that is criterion-based or reference measurement. Kapag sample yung estudyante, halimbawa, okay, etong team na ito, itong estudyante nito, may pinakamaraming na-solve na problem. Pangalawa ito, pangatlo ito, pangapat na ito, kinumpara mo sa ibang achievement ng mga classmates niya. That is an example of norm-based or norm reference measurement. Okay? Maliwanag ba pagpapaliwanag ang halimbawa na ibinigay ko para sa math? Sino math majors?
Mukhang wala na sila, sir.
Mukhang wala na sila. Okay. O, bahala
Sir.
sila sa buhay sila. Oh,
Sir, kunyari sa PE class,
okay.
yung measurement is to play the Zumba activity, sir.
Okay, to play,
We divided the class into two, sir. So it happens na parang hindi naman siya, sir, accident na parang pareho yung pinerform ng two groups, sir. So, pero meron kang personal criteria. Is there a sudden shift to norm referential na, sir? Pag ganun, sir, pag pareho ng dalawa.
kung parehas sila.
Hindi, sir, I mean,
Halimbawa, ganito yung sinasabi mo, Jovins, no? Halimbawa, nagkaroon kayo ng Zumba, no? Zumba activity. Ngayon,
Opo.
nagkataon na parehas kayo ng music, gano'n?
oh yes, sir, pareho ng music, pareho kami ng steps. Sir, is there a sudden norm na, sir?
Pero ang tanong ko ngayon, kasama ba sa rubric? Kasama ba sa rubric na dapat di parehas?
Sir, wala pong naka-indicate. Basta meron lang po yung parang percentage po ng
Okay.
music.
So, hindi pwedeng bigyan kayo ng score ng teacher at babaan kayo ng score kasi parehas kayo ng music kasi wala naman sa rubric iyon. Ito ang una na nagbigay ang teacher ng rubric. That means that the teacher is making use of the criterion-based reference. Okay? So, hindi dapat maka-apekto yung score ninyo kahit na hindi dapat maka-apekto yung pagkakaparehas ninyo ng music dun sa Zumba, dun sa score ninyo later. Kasi unang sa lahat, nagbigay siguro ng rubric na basehan niya doon sa pagbibigay ng score doon sa Zumba ninyo. So, mag-isip lang si teacher dapat doon sa rubric, and that is criterion reference measurement.
Okay, sir.
O, ganun yun. Kapag ginagawa ng teacher niyo sa inyo, i-question ninyo.
Okay po, sir.
Oo. O, may mga tanong pa? May tanong pa? Charlemagne, may tanong ka ading ko. Si Charlemagne, math major ba ito?
Suksay po, sir.
Soksay ka? O. Charlemagne, may tanong ka, Charlemagne?
Wala po, sir.
O gusto niyo bang bigyan ko ng halimbawa sa soksay naman?
That would be great, sir.
Wow, iba ka na talaga grade 5. Okay. Sige, halimbawa sa soksay. Biglang nabobo ako, bigla ako nabobo, no? Sa soksay. Ay major ako. Okay. Okay. Halimbawa. Nagpagawa ako sa inyo ng isang tinalakay ko yung iba't ibang psychological perspective. Okay. Functionalism, conflict theory, interactionism, and the other one is feminism. These are all psychological perspectives. Yung pagbibigay ko halimbawa sa klase ng team activity, okay, na bawat team ay na-assign sa isang sociological perspective na kailangan magbigay sila ng mga halimbawa. Ito ay halimbawa ng Nantes. Okay? Ngayon, hinati-hati ko pa rin kayo sa iba't ibang pangkat. At bigyan ng isang isyong panlipunan. Okay? O social issue na kailangang unawain ninyo gamit ang 4 na perspektibong sosiolohikal. At nagbigay ako sa inyo ng rubric. Okay? Ng rubric kung paano gumawa o paano sumulat ng isang sanaysay para ipaliwanag ang nasabing isyong panlipunan gamit ang 4 na perspektibong sosiolohikal. At ang criteria ay ganito. Una, nilalaman. Pangalawa, bahagi ng sanaysay. Pangatlo, pagkakalahad ng mga tamang halimbawa. Ito yung mga criteria. Ito yung mga kriteria. At bibigyan ko yun ng score gamit ang criteria na iyon. That is criterion-based or criterion reference measurement. Okay. Pero ganito pagkakagrade ko ngayon. Hindi ako gumamit ng rubric. Ang ginawa ko ay ganito. Binasa ko yung trabaho ng bawat team at nirate ko at nirank ko ayon sa pagkaka-appreciate ko doon sa sanaysay ninyo. That is norm reference or norm-based measurement. Grade 5 and Charlemagne. Okay ba?
Sir?
Okay ba yon?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, so nabigyan ko naman ng halimbawa, no? Maliwanag ba ang pagpapaliwanag ko sa measurement?
Yes po, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay,
Sir, may tanong ako.
sige, atin ko.
Sir, anong pinagkaiba ng analytic tsaka ano na yun? Analytic tsaka yung isa, sir? Yung holistic rubric.
Ay, analytical. I-discuss natin yan later. Masyado ka naman advanced kapatid. Okay, sige.
Okay, sir, sorry.
Sasagutin ko na. Anyway, meron tayong discussion later on how to do rubric. Ganito. Ang pinagkaiba ni analytic rubric sa holistic rubric. Si holistic rubric, ang nakikita mo lang ay yung kabuuan. Okay? Yung kabuuan na gusto mong makita na gagawin ng mga mag-aaral mo. That is holistic rubric. Halimbawa, yung ginagawa natin sa klase, yung content, grammar, ganyan lang, yan ay halimbawa ng holistic rubric. Kasi isa lang ang binigay ko na descriptor nung success indicator. Kung ano lang yung perfect na gusto kong makita, that is holistic rubric. Okay? Pero pag sinabi natin analytic rubric, kaya nga analytic ang tawag, himay-himayin mo yung success indicator. Kaya meron yung 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. O meron yung very good, good, fair, poor. Tapos i-describe mo kung kailan very good, i-describe mo kailan poor, i-describe mo kailan fair, i-describe mo kailan zero. That is an example of analytic rubric. Kasi hihimayin mo yung kabuuan ng success indicator. Doon sa holistic rubric, bibigyan mo lang ng description yung kabuuan na gusto mong makita tungkol doon sa success indicator. Grade 5, okay ba?
Yes, sir.
O,
Ano
later,
yung question, sir?
Ano pa?
Ano yung sir? Magkapareho lang ba yung rubric sa criteria?
Ang criteria ay bahagi lamang o elemento lamang ng rubric. Okay? Dahil ang kompletong rubric ay mayroong criteria at mayroong descriptor ng bawat criteria. At merong allotted points sa bawat criteria. Ang criteria ay kapag criteria lang tapos may points, yun lang yun. Pero pag rubric, kapag binigyan mo siya ng descriptor, ng description kung ano yung success indicator na iyon, ba magiging rubric siya. So, ibig sabihin, ang criteria ay isang bahagi lamang ng tinatawag nating rubric.
Okay, sir.
Okay. May mga tanong pa? At talakayin yan natin later sa assessment. Meron tayong separate discussion ng rubrics making later. Okay? Okay ba?
Sir, yung sa po, yung sa test, sir.
Ano sa test?
Sir, di ba yun yung parang yun yung basehan? Ilan ang ibibigay na score or ilan yung nakuha score nung bata doon sa test. Pero bakit, sir, sa ibang public school, sir, inaalaw yung, kunwari, yung estudyante, sir, parang kalagitnaan ng discussion, tapos may quiz sila, and then biglang na-excuse yung isang estudyante. Dahil yung isang estudyante ay kasali sa, or kalahok siya dun sa sir, sa event, parang ganun, sir. Bakit, sir, parang inaalaw, sa amin dati kasi siya parang na-experience ko siya, parang inaalaw na parang mabibigyan na ng perfect score yung na-excuse na estudyante.
Okay. That's what we call hindi dapat ganoon. Pero that's one kind of motivation. Okay, for students involved in school activities, involved in leadership activities, involved in competitions. Parang ano lang siya, parang nagsisilbi siyang extrinsic motivation for them. Okay? And at the same time, parang putting value into their contribution to the school because they are representing the school. Kahit sa St. Louis, ginagawa natin yan to motivate student leadership. Halimbawa, they are excused and considered OB in class. At kapag OB sila, ibig sabihin kung anong highest score, yun na rin yung score nila. Kung anong patakaran, yan ang perfect score. Kung patakaran ng polisiya, bigyan sila ng perfect score. That is an example of implementing motivation in the classroom setting or in school setting.
But is it fair though, sir, for the part of those students na...
Okay. It is fair considering that you are putting value into the contribution of that student, of that good student in the school. Hence, a motivation also for the others to work hard for them to represent the school in the succeeding competition or in other activities.
Okay, sir.
Oo. Kasi parang ano siya, doon papasok yung hidden curriculum. Okay, I think you discuss this in your teaching profession already. Doon papasok yung hidden curriculum.
Yung ano, sir?
Yung tinatawag natin na yung leadership participation, competition participation mga estudyante, dito papasok yung hidden curriculum. Na hindi naman siya kasama doon sa curriculum mismo, Pero dahil ginagawa sa eskwelahan, ay nagiging kasama na siya, nagiging hidden siya. Ibig sabihin, meron pa rin siyang malilinang nakakayahan sa mga mag-aaral kahit na hindi siya bahagi ng visible curriculum. Later, you have curriculum subject naman later. That will be explained to you. Okay? Kung ako magiging teacher sa curriculum, I'll explain that to you everything. Pero certainly hindi ako. Jovin?
Sir?
Yes?
Ay, wala po.
Wala? Wala? Okay? So, any other question? So, dahil magta-time na, okay, magta-12 na, we will continue our discussion later. Then, after our discussion, saka ko ibibigay yung activity, okay? O gusto niyo, ibigay ko na ngayon yung activity. Ay, bigay ko na. Okay.
Opo, sir.
Sige. So, allow me to share the screen. Bigay ko na para meron ko yung time na gawin hanggang Saturday. Ano nakikita niyo dyan? Email ko, no? Sorry. Ano nakikita na ninyo?
LMS, sir.
Okay, okay? Tayo sa klase. Okay, ibigay ko itong assessment and life. Okay, i-equate natin ang assessment sa buhay. Okay, ito ang gagawin natin. I'll do it now. Okay, ang gagawin ninyo ay ganito. I would like you to study the scoring guide for online discussion and forum before engaging in this discussion thread. Anong gagawin? I would like you to share one skill that you perfectly do or nearly perfected. Narrate the experiences that you've gone through to perfect or nearly perfect such skill. What have you learned about assessment based on this theory? Sorry, dalawang on ko doon. Okay, halimbawa, ano yung mga kakayahan ninyo sa buhay na kayang-kaya na ninyong gawin? O kaya, malapit na sa perfecto na magawa ninyo. At ibahagi ninyo kung ano yung mga karanasan na pinagdaanan ninyo bago ninyo ma-perfect ang nasabing kakayahan. At paano nyo kumpara yung karanasan ninyo sa assessment? Okay? So yun ang gagawin ninyo. Maliwanag ba? Halimbawa, Jovin, halimbawa ikaw. O ito, pwede mo ibahagi ito, Jovin, sa sharing. Halimbawa, Jovin, sa pag-volleyball mo. Diba? Kalindarin mo sa volleyball. At yung mga karanasan na napagdaanan mo bago ka naging ganyan kagaling sa paglalaro ng volleyball. At paano mo maipapaliwanag ang assessment gamit yung karanasan mo doon sa kakayahang iyan. Halimbawa, ikaw grade 5. Halimbawa, ikaw magaling ka sa vlogging. Siyempre, doon isa hindi ka magaling. Pero ano yung napagdaanan mo bago mo nagawa ang vlogging? Bago mo na perfect pagpa-vlog and others. At paano mo ito, anong kahulugan pwede mo bigay sa assessment base doon sa karanasan mo?
Okay.
Okay? So, maliwanag po ba? Maliwanag po ba ang assessment natin? Okay. So, thank you for yes.
Ay sir, ekwan lamang po. Hindi ito konektado sa ating discussion ngayon. Pero ano yung kanyo sir, yung pananaw nyo tungkol sa mga guro sir na hindi nakakasunod dun sa guideline na inilabas ng paaralan tungkol po dun sa pagbibigay ng assessment sa araw lamang ng Lunes at Martes. Kasi po nung nakaraang linggo sir, may nagbigay sa amin ng assessment ng Thursday na. Sa pagkakaalam namin, sir, hanggang Tuesday lamang po yung pagbibigay ng assessment.
Depende ako, nag-agree ba kayo? Ano ba ang, for example, tayo, di ba tayo nagbigay ako ng learning schedule.
Sir.
Tama? Pare-agreehan tayong lahat. Okay, na pwedeng hindi akma yung learning schedule doon sa binigay na memo, pero napag-agreehan natin sa klase. Meron ba kayong learning schedule o wala?
Wala, sir. Actually,
so kung wala siyang tinalakan ng learning schedule, edi dapat sumunod siya doon sa kung ano ang memo. Pwede yung
meron yung ngayon niya binigay, tapos, gabi niya binigay, mamayang gabi niya bibigay, tapos kinabukasan agad yung deadline.
Ay, hindi pwede Malinaw ang usapan na Saturday ang deadline ng lahat ng assessment. And that should be very clear. I think I have to relay this message, relay this feedback to the concerned officers, because this they really have to follow. We really have to follow the memo. That's the only way to help you also is out the pain of doing online learning.
Okay, sir.
Tapos, thank you for that.
One last, sir, yung sa mga grupo na nagbibigay ng ng mga takdang aralin ng mga sir, merong kailangan dapat yung sa poster, yung drawing, sir, ganun po. Paano yung mga estudyante, sir, na hindi makakalabas, na walang mga materials?
Tama yan. Ito dapat, malinaw din ang memo dyan na dapat ang mga activities na pinapagawa ng guro ay hindi nagre-require or hindi pinipere sa mga mag-aaral na lumabas ng kanilang mga bahay-bahay. So dapat tinatilitin na. Dapat nga ang teacher nagkaroon muna ng profiling bago siya pa-require ng mga activities. Dapat nagkaroon ng agreement ang mga estudyante kung kaya nilang gawin ang nasabing bagay na naaayon sa IATF protocol. That's a good thing. Hindi dapat. Halimbawa, sa klase natin, siyempre tinitignan ko rin kung ano yung mga kaya niyong gawin sa loob ng bahay lamang. Hindi pwede na magbibigay ako ng mga pagtatasa, ng mga gawain pagkatuto na sabihan kayo na lalabas at kung ano-ano pa. So we really have to follow the memo. We really have to follow the guidelines on doing the online learning modality. This is a good feedback. These are a good number of feedback. I'll be relaying said feedback to the concerned officers for these teachers to be reminded.
Thank you, sir.
Okay? Please message me the name of the teachers. You message me, do not tell it here.
Okay.
Okay?
Kilala ko siya.
Okay. So thank you for attending our class now. Okay, I'll be uploading the recorded version of this discussion. I hope you learned something today, and see you next meeting.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.